Well, this is what the worst GPU sales in decades looks like on a graph. Now, to be clear, let me cite sources and all that. This is a Tom's Hardware article titled Desktop GPU Sales Lowest in Decades, and they're grabbing the information from John Petty Research. And, well, it looks like there's a massive dip here. So I think we all understand that the demand for new GPUs is going to be a lot lower than it was during the whole 2020, 2021, going into 2022. We had crypto, we had work from home, all of that. A lot of people upgrading. So we understand that we'd be lower than that. But if you really track this, and what are all these colors here and everything? So we have green is Nvidia, red is AMD, blue is Intel, and this is the numbers on the left-hand side here are millions of units shipped. And now this is actually extremely important detail because I see a lot of people reporting on this as sales, and I do think it's incredibly important to notice that this research is based on shipments. Shipments are not the same thing as sales. Sales could be higher or lower than shipments if cards aren't selling well and there's a lot of inventory in the chain. They could be under shipping in order to try to correct. Anyway, just do keep in mind that this is shipments, not sales, in millions of units. Anyway, but if you look back all the way to the left-hand side of this thing, you know what? Let me go, I'm tiny out of your way. There. Okay, fathead out of the way of the graph. We got 2014 back here. We can see that interestingly, everybody's doing badly here, but I'm especially noticing that, man, this looks like a rough patch for AMD because, Nvidia seems to have, kind of matched some of their worst points that they've been at in a long time. AMD seems to be well below, which is not really good to see. And of course, Intel hasn't been doing the whole discrete GPU thing as long. And do note, this is desktop discrete graphics cards. We're not talking, laptop stuff. We're not talking integrated, any of that. But yeah, this is a good picture of, well, I mean, I don't think a lot of people are interested in GPUs that cost as much as the ones that currently do while offering such little performance gain over their previous series, because a lot of people already upgraded. We saw this big bump during the whole crypto boom and all of that. So a lot of people have already upgraded to the 3000 series. So if you offer us something like a 4060 Ti that's only 10% faster than a 3060 Ti at the same MSRP, why would somebody who already bought a 3060 Ti want to upgrade? Although the whole picture is a lot more complicated than this. There's also a few other interesting charts here. So how are the companies doing by market share, by percentage? So if you look at the shipments in Q1 of 2023, we see Nvidia up at 84%, with AMD at 12% and Intel at 4%. So if you're interested in how the whole Nvidia, AMD, Intel split is going here, well, there you go. Now, if you look at this historically, again, I'm a little concerned for AMD here, where it looks like historically they've been up here a lot closer into the 20% range. And we're down here at 10 to 12%. And again, this isn't the percentage of people who have these cards. I think this is based on the shipments in that quarter. I'm fairly certain, right? And now we're looking at, if we track this a bit over time, we've seen AMD at 12%, 12%, 10% down from here. It's interesting to see, okay, so does this mean Intel is grabbing some of AMD's share here, right? Because if you add these few percent back on, we don't quite get to where AMD used to be, but if you add the blues and reds here together, it seems like they might get closer to where AMD used to be, although it does look like Nvidia overall has just been grabbing some market share from both. Anyway, I'm a little concerned here because are Intel and AMD going to just cannibalize each other's sales? Is Intel just cannibalizing AMD sales rather than, any of them cutting into Nvidia? And if we want to bring down prices, I think that's really what you need, is for Nvidia to feel any kind of hurt there. But this is also just shipments of desktop discrete graphics cards, numbers of units sold just combined, I believe. And you can see here that just overall, when just the entire market not split by brand, we are at the lowest shipments on this chart here. And again, this chart's going all the way back to 2014. So pointing a bit of a bleak picture here. Now, I do have some other interesting articles, though, that almost seem to conflict with this. Although, again, what we're looking at here is shipments. But what about actual revenue? Because, well, shipments are lower. Nvidia seems to want to keep their margins very high. They want to charge a lot of money. So there's a very interesting direct quotes we have from Nvidia in this WCCF Tech article. By the way, all of my links will be in the video description today. So we got this WCCF Tech headline saying, Nvidia GeForce RTX 40 gaming GPU's revenue is ramping 40% faster than Ampere, which was the 3000 series. Majority still without RTX. Okay, there's a bunch of interesting quotes here. So these quotes are apparently coming from the Bank of America Global Technology Conference, and they're coming from Nvidia's SVP of Gaming, Jeff Fisher, where he was discussing the state of GeForce gaming segment and what we can expect this year. Okay, so I actually want to get into a whole bunch of just these direct quotes and see what Nvidia is saying here, because I think it's interesting both in the stats of how their sales are looking and in their overall strategy of this pricing structure. Because what it looks like they're trying to do is definitely just upsell people to spend more money on a GPU compared to what they used to buy, right? If maybe you used to buy a $200 or $300 GPU, maybe now you're buying a $400 or $500 GPU. Maybe you used to buy a $500 GPU, now you're buying an $800 GPU. And that's been their strategy pricing-wise for the 40 series, and is it paying off for them? Okay, so it's a lot of quotes here. And last, I wanted to share with you a bit of our Ada ramp. So as you guys know, we launch our products, so this is clearly not like a written statement. This is a direct quote from someone speaking, so, you know, the grammatical structure here could be a little bit, you know, it's not a written piece, right? So we launch our products, our new generations from the top down, starting at the top. And for reasons you're also aware of, Ada has taken us a little longer to move down the stack than typical generations, so for this reason, we've got a fair amount of history on the 699 up class of Ada. This is our 4070 Ti and up, and Ada, in terms of the revenue generated, is ramping much faster, 3 times that, and about 40% faster than Ampere. We're super pleased with the Ada ramp to date. So this is weird when you look at it compared to, and again, I'm blinding you between the white background chart and the black one, sorry guys. When you look at the overall shipments just down so much, right? You could be like, how are they pleased by this? They're talking about this compared to Ampere, which seemed to be up so much higher. How could they be pleased with this? What do they mean? Why? Because they're talking about revenue, and those other charts were shipments, right? Now they're talking about revenue. They've priced these so much higher. So they give some interesting charts here, talking about this. Let's get into some more direct quotes, all right? So I shared with you how the 4070 Ti is doing relative to prior gens, and in fact, the early results from lower down Ada are also very, very strong. I mean, we're really pleased with the Ada ramp. So, anyway, where does he get to the actual point? So he's saying, remember in the days of product shortages, so he's talking about the whole 2020, 2021, there was crypto, there was supply chain issues, all of that. Throughout the pandemic and work from home and crypto, as you mentioned, we didn't really change our GPU pricing. I mean, the way I measured upsell was from my core price now, what it ultimately got inflated to in the end market. And that what we've seen today for Ada in this class, $699 and up, is $300 to $400 upgrade in mix in the high end. So gamers who are buying our high end of our Ada are buying from a much lower class of product, which is super exciting for us. Ampere, it wasn't, it was, I'll speculate, it was in the $200 to $300 upgrade range, and Turing was probably a bit below that, so we've seen an increasing mix of upgrades over time. So what he's saying here might be a little bit hard to understand, so people get a clarifying question to make sure they're getting this correct. So the question from Vivek Arya saying, so just to get it right, so what you're saying is that people who upgraded to Ampere on an average bought a card that was $200 more expensive than their previous Nvidia GPU. And now those who are upgrading to Ada are buying something that is $300 to $400 more expensive than their previous Nvidia GPU. And he's saying, right, relative to what they had. So what they're saying here is, again, one thing with the Nvidia GeForce experience and all of that, I think is where they're able to track this so easily is, they know what GPU you have, and they know when you upgrade your GPU, and they know what you had previously and what you're upgrading to. So what they're saying here is that when people are buying the new 40 series GPUs, they're on average buying a GPU that is $300 to $400 more expensive than the one they had before that. And Nvidia is very, very happy about this. So in other words, their strategy has been to just increase the price on everything and, just hope that people are just willing to spend a lot more money than they were previously. And apparently they are very happy with how that's going. Despite that we're seeing what seems to be terrible shipment numbers, they're claiming that their revenue is way up. Okay, so that is very interesting. So their average sale prices are up, even if those are down. Now there's some other interesting charts here and some. So in other words, they're talking about like the pricing, the ramp at different pricing levels. Let's get into some more quotes. So yes, I'll tell you my expectation, and that is, at the highest end, those gamers will upgrade every generation. I mean, they like the best. They likely have the wherewithal to afford the high end each gen, and that's about every 2 to 2.5 years. So he's talking about people at the high end are willing to upgrade pretty much every generation and spend lots and lots of money on that. But now he's talking about, as you get to the lower end, people wait longer between upgrade cycles. So they're talking about the fact that actually a large number of gamers don't actually have an RTX GPU yet, meaning a lot of people are still on GTX GPUs, if you look at their install base that they're going off of here. And it says that 18% RTX 3060 plus performance. So of NVIDIA's install base, only 18% of gamers have an RTX 3060 or more powerful GPU, which is extremely interesting. And only 44% overall have an RTX class GPU. So that would mean that more than half are still on a GTX GPU entirely. So I think they're thinking about they could maybe capture some more upgrades eventually once people give up on their GTX ones. Anyway, very, I think, revealing information and charts here on how Nvidia views what's happening. Because again, we're seeing these terrible sales numbers, and yet we're seeing them still capturing an even larger percentage of the actual market share of what is being shipped compared to AMD and Intel, who are offering much better performance per dollar in a lot of price categories. And Nvidia seems to feel like their pricing strategy of, let's make a 4070 Ti $800 instead of the $600 3070 Ti, which was already criticized for being too expensive. And again, at least according to these quotes and their figures, it seems to be working for them. So I don't really know what to say. It's also hard to say, okay, well, don't buy them. Because Nvidia is already making so much money on their AI space. They passed the $1 trillion market cap point mostly based on their AI sales. So they can also weather the storm on if people did kind of refuse to buy their gaming line too, which apparently, while sales are down, enough people are still paying these massive markups that they're happy with the sales. I don't know, guys. And then we got the 4060 Ti, apparently, you know, with 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Well, you want to get 16, it's going to cost you an extra $100. Imagine their margins on that. Like, we have an article here from Tom's Hardware talking about the fact that 8 gigabytes of memory should now be costing around $27. So while I'm sure there's other costs involved with adding the actual VRAM chip to the board and the new design and all of that, there's no way adding an extra 8 gigabytes of memory costs $100, and yet your 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte is gonna have that extra $100 cost attached to it. I don't know, guys, crazy stuff. Let's move on to some other topics, though. One thing making the news is Gigabyte RTX 3040 PCBs cracking and the company rejecting RMA claims. This was first getting reported by Louis Rossmann, although I think Jay's 2 Cents, I think, may have done a video covering this. I haven't had a chance to watch that yet. So what's going on here with all of this? Well, it looks like a lot of the cards are getting cracks in the PCB right there. And these stickers are coming from when people try to send this back to Gigabyte, you know, for a warranty claim. Hey guys, your GPU's not working, fix it, it's under warranty. They're rejecting the claim and putting these arrow stickers pointing out that the PCB is cracked right here. And that's the reason for rejecting the claim, and warranty, again, will deny physical hardware breaking down for things like that. Anyway, this Louis Rossmann video was talking about how these can be fixed. There is a possibility for fixing them, although I think it can have limited success and isn't a complete fix, but just something to be aware of here. Now, why would all of this be happening? Now, I'm wondering, I don't have proof of this, but I'm wondering if a lot of these cracks are coming from GPU sagging in the bracket. A lot of GPUs these days are incredibly heavy, and a lot of people don't actually put an anti-sag, you know, bracket or anything like that to support it. And a lot of GPUs don't come with one. People might not know that they should do that, or just not be too concerned about it. Like, I don't care if it's sagging a little bit. Well, I think it's possible that that's where some of this damage would be coming from, if I had to guess. Now, another thing I'll mention here, if you've been following up on this, is on this videocards.com article about this, I saw a very interesting comment. Now, I cannot verify the claim made by this commenter, but this is Jeremy? I don't know, guys. Anyway, I'm just gonna go with Jeremy. Sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation here with these accent marks and whatnot. Anyway, the tech who blew the whistle about this to Rossmann and Jay's 2 Cents, the GPU repair community, thank you for spreading the word about this problem. There are a few mistakes I've noticed, though, which I can understand, since while I make myself fully available for questioning, I'm not being credited well nor contacted for this. So anyway, if this is the real guy who originally brought all this to light, well, here you go. Here's some credit, dude. I can't verify the comment's accuracy, though, guys. Anyway, in the area of the crack, there aren't any high bandwidth traces. Mostly enable and P good signals for the 1v8 rail, and one core Dr. Moss, DRMOS, and it does seemingly happen sometimes that if the crack is flexed when the PC is on the layers, when the PC is on, the layers sometimes short together, killing one or more power rails on the way, so that's like 2 repair jobs in one. He says, with that said, it's not because of broken PCIe lines, it is the components that aren't getting power. He says, in the Discord GPU repair community, I have gathered the evidence I provided to Louis, where we are seeing a successful repair rate of around 10 to 20%. So they're seeing a successful repair rate of only around 10 to 20%. And these cards will never be safe to use horizontally again. And we make that clear to our customers. So I thought I'd bring this information to light in case, you know, that maybe brings some more light on what exactly is breaking here, the actual success of the repair rate. And it looks like even successful repairs are still not able to use in a horizontally mounted fashion. Again, I think it's that you know, downward pressure from the sag. Now let's move on to an interesting leak. So this is not guaranteed, but there might be a new X3D part coming out, and I'm not talking about for the 7000 series. I'm talking for the 5000 series. So many people are still on an AM4 motherboard, and for a lot of people, they've been now tempted down by the low pricing on the 5800 X3D, the only 3D V-cache part for the 5000 series, as your end game upgrade path for the 5000 series CPUs, or in other words, for the AM4 motherboards. However, it's looking like there could be a 6-core X3D part coming out for the AM4 platform, which would be really interesting. Now, this is a videocards.com article, although the information is coming from Chilled Dog. I always want to mispronounce this as Chili Dog. Anyway, from Chilled Dog on Twitter. Now, it's just a screenshot of a product configuration list here, where they have the 5800 X3D, but also below it a 5600 X3D. Now, if this is true, notice that we do see some minor clock speed reduction compared to the 5800 X3D, but that amount of reduction isn't going to be that major of a difference in performance, especially when a lot of the performance of these parts is just coming from the much larger cache. And here they are showing 96 megabytes of L3 cache, just like on the 5800 X3D. Although anyway, the point is this would be a 6-core 12-thread part, which for many games is really going to perform very similarly to your 8-core 16-thread. Now, there's no pricing here. The only thing that would make this more interesting than a 5800 X3D, because this clearly won't be quite as good, would be if the price was extremely attractive. 5800 X3Ds have come down as low as $289 or so. I posted one recently on my community page. Again, coming down pretty low price. Now, my overall thoughts on the 5800 X3D is that you shouldn't necessarily build a new AM4 system, like buy a new AM4 motherboard and RAM and all of that around a 5800 X3D. Because it might make more sense if you're building a whole new system to go with a newer platform that will give you more upgradability. But in terms of these parts being great for somebody on a Ryzen 2000 or 3000 CPU user, getting a massive increase in gaming performance without having to buy a new motherboard and RAM and all that, these make a ton of sense. And so if the 5600 X3D actually comes out, and comes in at at enough of a lower price compared to the 8-core version, it could be very attractive, although once again, this is just a leak. This may or may not actually occur. Now, in another interesting leak, there's Ryzen Threadripper 7000 listings hinted. Now, this is, again, another just hardware leaker on Twitter. This one's at Momomo US, showing a product listing of a bunch of, apparently, Ryzen 7000 Threadrippers. Now, it would be interesting if AMD does this, because they never really actually did their 5000 series Threadrippers, and especially as an upgraded to the 3000 series Threadrippers. In other words, I think this could be a tough sell for people who bought into the 3000 series Threadrippers on the promise of more upgradability that was never actually then delivered on. So are people going to want to buy into this again? I don't know. Now, I mostly cover gaming stuff, and Threadrippers don't make a whole lot of sense for gaming anyway, so I think I'm going to move on from this topic, but I thought I'd at least throw out there that it looks like they might be getting into Threadrippers again with a 7000 series version. Let's talk about some interesting GPU cooler ideas. So Inno3D unveils an RTX 4070 and 4060 Ti with hidden power connectors. So it seems like in the motherboard and GPU space, there's this big emphasis lately on hiding the power connectors. Now, while we've seen the weird proprietary motherboard slot option from, I think it was Asus, this is a little less extreme and a little less just proprietary. So I think this is kind of a cool idea. So it's just hiding the power connector on the kind of the back of the card and routing the cable through it. So if you take a look, you can then close this back plate and you're hiding the cables underneath the shroud on the back of the card, which is pretty interesting. If you want to see how this actually would then look in a case, here's the shot. So you've got your card, and instead of having a big power connector right in front here with the cords wrapping around, the cords could be, you know, coming out the back this way. I bet we could have tucked them actually through this hole in the back of the case here and then routed down through. So it's certainly an interesting option. Here's some more shots of these card designs. So overall, I think it's just cool to see more innovation in the different designs that we're seeing here. Here's some more shots on that. And again, I much prefer something that doesn't require a proprietary motherboard slot to kind of lock you into a certain ecosystem. Although, you know, having that available for people who want it isn't terrible either. Now, Sparkle, who's been getting back into the game with some Intel Arc GPU coolers, has shown off a water block on an A770. However, this is just a concept. This one is not guaranteed to actually go on sale, but I thought I'd at least mention that, hey, that's a thing that's being explored at least by Sparkle. And in other water cooling news, LYNK Plus has shown off a modular liquid cooler, currently just showing it for the 7900 XTX GPU, did they also say 3080s? Yeah, it looks like 3080s. Now, what's interesting about this is that it's modular in the sense that you could swap water blocks for newer generation of GPUs in the future. Also, that the cooling blocks would be die cast, although it's important to note that the one they're showing off is CNC drilled. So I don't think they're actually showing off using the die cast versions, which could save some money. And then I think the idea would be you could add more radiators and water blocks due to the modularity, while then keeping the same radiator pump module, and again, maybe swapping it out for new GPUs and all that. So it's an interesting concept. We'll see where it goes. I think how long it's supported and how much money they're able to save on the on being die cast rather than CNC drilled would have a lot to do with how interesting this ends up being in the end for consumers. Now, this is interesting. So we've been seeing the handheld, you know, Steam Deck style gaming PC segment really heating up in the, you know, competitor market here. Well, the OneXPlayer 2 Pro revealed with AMD Ryzen 7 7840U APU with an 8.4-inch 1600p screen and detachable controllers. So I think this is just an interesting looking overall design. So again, detachable controllers. Looks like they're showing off like a screen that pops out into a keyboard design. Again, the screen being a 1600p screen does make it, you know, much higher resolution than compared to the 800p screen you would have. You're now doubling in both directions, so 4 times the pixel density. All of that. Now, there's pros and cons to all of that, but again, this looks like some really interesting concepts to the design, and I'm all for there being more options out here. Now, there's a lot we don't know at this point, like the pricing that it would hit. But here's videocards.com's convenient little snapshot of what we do know about it so far and how it stacks up against the ROG Ally and Steam Deck from a comparison point of view. Now, one thing I'm noticing here is a 65.5 watt-hour battery compared to the 40 watt-hour battery on the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck, which could be interesting since battery life on these kinds of things can be everything. Because for the ROG Ally to get a big performance improvement over the Steam Deck, a lot of times you have to run it at a higher power state. But then if you have the same 40 watt-hour battery, but you're drawing more power, obviously your battery life diminishes. So anyway, interesting stuff there. I will be following that market segment. I do use my Steam Deck quite a bit, and I'm waiting for something with a better screen. I don't like the Steam Deck screen. Anyway, now Intel XeSS is now available in over 50 games. I should mention on the better screen, and yes, the ROG Ally has a better screen. My main problem is with running Windows, what I like on the Steam Deck is I can just turn the thing off and it goes to sleep, and it works nicely. It can be asleep in my games. It wakes back up nicely. Windows doesn't tend to sleep as well, especially in the middle of a game. So that's one of my main concerns with swapping to something like the ROG Ally, which does have a better screen, although it's still not OLED. I want an OLED. Anyway, Intel XeSS is expanding support, now available in over 50 games. I'm interested in doing a future video looking at, does it make sense to use XeSS on AMD GPUs instead of FSR2 when it's available? Because XeSS runs a bit slowly on competitors' hardware. It does run on competitor hardware using DP4A fallback. So it's doesn't give as big of a performance boost, but image quality wise, since it is more like the AI trained type algorithm, more similar to DLSS than FSR2 is, I have only played with this a little bit in Cyberpunk, but I feel like sometimes the image quality can be more stable than what I'm seeing on FSR. But anyway, I'm just glad to see this getting into more games. I would love to see XeSS grow into something, or FSR2 if it got improved, grow into something that image quality wise is more competitive with DLSS, which still does look better, but did have better support for all GPU brands. I would really like something that's more of a true DLSS alternative, as good, but with support for all GPU vendors. That's really what I'd like to see. Now, there's an update to the DLSS SDK, which looks like it will make DLAA a more easy just part of... In other words, let me put it this way. It's frustrating when games have DLSS, but don't offer a DLAA option, which is where you run the game at native resolution, but use the anti-aliasing from the DLSS algorithm. Anyway, I think this video is getting pretty dang long, and I need to wake up my kids. Quick note about the channel, though. As many of you know, I am a high school teacher. Well, I just finished my school here. So while that does mean that, some summer vacation-y, travel-y things will happen from time to time, and that would mean fewer videos on the channel when that's happening. It does mean I'm home more and can now probably do a whole bunch more testing. So anyway, expect a lot more benchmarks and testing and maybe more in-depth videos, retesting a bunch of my GPUs I've already done in more of the latest games. Maybe we should revisit some of the high-end GPUs again, now that I have a 7800X 3D platform and there's newer games out, and we've had more time for driver updates, revisit the high-end AMD versus Nvidia cards and the latest games and drivers and all that. Let me know what kind of testing stuff you guys would be interested in on the channel. And again, massive thank you to everybody who's hit the subscribe button and even people who hit the join button to directly support the channel financially. I honestly can't believe people, like, how big the channel's grown, and just all the support that I'm getting from you guys. It's amazing. But again, just viewers, commenters, subscribers, all of that. Just massive thank you to everybody, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.